The great hall was massive. It stretched so far that a person could barely see the other end. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Hundreds of aliens sat in rows looking down at the floor below. They represented different worlds, different species, different empires that had been traveling through space for thousands of years. At the center of this enormous room stood one human. He wore a simple black suit with a white shirt and a dark tie. His name was Jake Morrison, and he looked calm. His hands were behind his back, and he stood very still. He had been waiting for 30 minutes, but he showed no sign of being nervous or uncomfortable. Jake was 42 years old. He had spent most of his adult life as a soldier. He had fought on Mars during the corporate wars. He had led missions in the asteroid belt where pirates tried to steal from mining colonies. He had done things that were still classified, missions that nobody except a few generals knew about. But today he was not wearing his military uniform. Today he was supposed to be a diplomat. The suit felt wrong to him. It was too tight around the shoulders, and the tie felt like someone was slowly choking him. He would have preferred his combat armor, or even just a simple pair of cargo pants and a shirt. But Earth had sent him here to talk, not to fight. At least that was what everyone thought. A voice echoed through the hall. It belonged to Counselor Vex, a reptilian creature with green scales and yellow eyes. The human wants to speak to us. How amusing. These primitive creatures think they deserve our attention. Other aliens made noises. Some clicked their mandibles. Others made electronic sounds through their translation devices. A few laughed in ways that humans could understand. They all shared the same feeling. They thought humans were weak and unimportant. Jake did not react. He had expected this. Earth's intelligence services had told him exactly what to expect. The Galactic Council looked down on humanity. They saw Earth as a young species that had just learned how to travel faster than light. Humans had only been in space for 200 years, while some of these civilizations had been exploring the stars for 10,000 years or more. "Respected counselors," Jake said. His voice was clear and strong. It carried through the hall without him needing to shout. "Earth requests permission to establish colonies in the Outer Rim territories. We also ask for expanded trade rights with Council member species." More laughter filled the room. An insect-like alien named Counselor Thrain raised one of her forearms. "The Outer Rim borders Zetharian space. The Zetharians are warriors. They would destroy your colonies in days. You have no military fleet. You cannot protect yourselves. Request denied." Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his face neutral. No military fleet. That was the lie Earth had been telling for 2 centuries. The Council believed humans were peaceful explorers who cared more about science and art than weapons and war. They had never bothered to look deeper. They had never asked the right questions. "Earth can defend its interests," Jake said carefully. Counselor Vex made a barking sound that might have been a laugh. "Defend? Human, your entire species has 40 billion people spread across 12 worlds. The Vraxian Empire alone has 500 billion citizens and 10,000 warships. You are insects compared to us. You are nothing." The other counselors agreed loudly. Jake stood quietly and let them have their moment. This was all part of the plan. Earth needed to know if the Council would allow human expansion, or if they planned to keep humanity trapped in a small corner of the galaxy forever. "Perhaps we should teach this human a lesson," Counselor Thrain said. Her voice had an edge to it that Jake recognized. It was the sound of someone who had already made a decision and was just looking for an excuse. "The human stands here alone and unprotected. An accident could happen, a tragic malfunction. Earth would learn not to challenge us, and we would send our regrets." The hall became silent. Every alien eye turned to look at Jake. This was the moment everything changed. The moment when talking stopped and something else began. "You would kill a diplomat?" Jake asked. His voice was quiet, but everyone heard him. "Under a flag of peace? In neutral territory?" "Kill is such an unpleasant word," Vex replied. "We prefer to think of it as a lesson in politics. Your death will teach Earth to be humble. These things happen in space. It is very dangerous out here." Jake nodded slowly. He looked like he was thinking about what they had just said. But inside something was changing. The diplomat was disappearing. The soldier was waking up. His heart rate slowed down. His breathing became steady and controlled. Every muscle in his body relaxed into a state of readiness that had been trained into him over 20 years of combat. "I see," Jake said softly. "Then I suppose we can stop pretending." He reached up and loosened his tie. It was a simple movement, casual and unhurried. But some of the aliens noticed that something about the human had changed. He did not stand like a nervous diplomat anymore. He stood like a predator deciding which prey to take first. "Security," Vex commanded. He pressed a button on his desk. "Remove the human. Make sure he does not leave this station alive." The massive doors at the end of the hall opened with a hiss of hydraulics. 20 armed guards marched in. They were different species, chosen because they were big and strong and good at fighting. They carried plasma rifles that could burn through steel. They had energy shields that could stop bullets. They wore armor that could protect them from explosions. They thought they were enough to handle one unarmed human. Jake took off his jacket and folded it carefully. He placed it on the railing in front of him. Then he rolled up his sleeves, taking his time, making sure the creases were neat. When he looked up at the approaching guards, his eyes had changed. The aliens saw something they had never seen in a human before. They saw a predator looking back at them. "Before we start," Jake said calmly, "I should probably tell you something that Earth's diplomats forgot to mention in my official biography." He smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "I am not just a diplomat. I am Commander Jake Morrison, Earth Marine Corps, Special Operations Division. I have fought in wars you have never heard of. I have been trained to kill in more ways than you can imagine. I have survived things that would have destroyed any of you." The guards slowed down. They were not sure what to do. The human was still talking like he had a chance. "And you thought I was just here to talk." The lead guard was a Kron, a species known throughout the galaxy for being excellent fighters. He was 7 feet tall with muscles like iron. He had never lost a fight in his entire life. He walked toward Jake with complete confidence. "Come quietly, human," the Kron said in broken galactic standard, "and we will make your death quick." "That is very kind of you," Jake replied. The Kron reached for Jake's shoulder. What happened next took less than 2 seconds. Jake moved with speed that shocked everyone watching. His left hand caught the Kron's wrist and twisted it at an angle that nature never intended. His right hand drove forward in a strike that hit the alien just below the ribcage. The sound echoed through the hall like a hammer hitting meat. The Kron's eyes went wide. All the air exploded out of his lungs. Before he could recover, Jake swept his legs out from under him. 300 pounds of alien warrior crashed to the floor so hard that the impact cracked the tiles. Jake had the Kron's plasma rifle in his hands before the alien stopped sliding. The other 19 guards froze. They could not process what they had just seen. Their leader, their best fighter, was lying on the ground gasping for air. The human had beaten him in the time it takes to blink. Jake checked the rifle like he had been using Kron weapons his whole life. He looked at the charge indicator. 48 shots. He looked up at the remaining guards. Then he looked at the counselors sitting in their seats, their faces showing shock and fear. 48 shots, Jake said. 19 targets, he chambered around. The metallic sound was very loud in the silent hall. This should be easy. The guards opened fire. Plasma bolts filled the air. Bright blue streaks of superheated energy that could melt through steel plate. They lit up the hall like lightning during a thunderstorm. The counselors screamed and dove for cover behind their desks. The sound was deafening, a constant roar of weapons fire that echoed off the crystal walls. Jake was not there anymore. He had already moved, rolling to the left behind a stone pillar before the first shot was fired. The plasma bolts hit the spot where he had been standing and scorched the floor black. He came up on one knee, aimed, and fired twice. 2 guards dropped, holes burned through their chest armor. The aliens had made a mistake. They were trained to fight civilians and lightly armed opponents. They knew how to intimidate and how to use overwhelming force against weak targets. But they had never fought someone like Jake. Someone who had spent 20 years learning how to survive when everyone wanted him dead. Jake moved like water, flowing from cover to cover, never staying in one place for more than a second. The guards tried to track him, but they were too slow. By the time they aimed at where he was, he had already moved somewhere else. Each time he stopped, his rifle fired. Each shot hit its target. He did not waste ammunition. He did not miss. 3 guards down, then 4, then 5. A Zarian guard tried to be clever. He waited until Jake was focused on other targets, then charged from the side with an energy blade. It was a good tactic. It might have worked against a normal soldier. But Jake's peripheral vision caught the movement. He spun, dropped the rifle, and let it hang from its strap. His hand went to his ankle and came up with a knife. The blade was simple carbon steel, nothing fancy. Earth technology, old and reliable. But in Jake's hand, it was more dangerous than any energy weapon. The Saurian swung his glowing blade. Jake ducked under it, stepped inside the alien's guard, and drove his knife up under the edge of the helmet. The Saurian's eyes went wide. He made a gurgling sound and collapsed. Jake pulled his knife free, wiped it on the dead alien's uniform, and sheathed it again. 6 guards down, 14 left. The remaining guards were scared now. Jake could see it in the way they moved, in how they held their weapons. They were trained warriors, but they had never faced anything like this. One human had killed 6 of them and wounded several others. He was not even breathing hard. They tried to form a defensive line using their energy shields to create a wall. It was smart. It gave them cover and forced Jake to come to them if he wanted to continue the fight. But Jake had no intention of playing their game. He grabbed a fallen guard's plasma pistol and threw it, not at the guards, but at one of the crystal light panels on the wall. The pistol exploded when it hit, shattering the panel and plunging that section of the hall into darkness. The guards fired at the shadows, wasting ammunition on nothing. Jake used the confusion to flank them. He moved along the wall quiet as a ghost until he was behind their defensive line. Then he opened fire. 4 guards dropped before the others realized what was happening. By the time they turned around, Jake had already moved again. 10 guards down, 10 left. The counselors were in full panic now. Some were trying to reach emergency exits. Others were calling for reinforcements on their communication devices. A few just sat frozen in their seats, too shocked to move. They had ordered the death of a diplomat, expecting it to be simple and quick. Instead, they were watching their security forces get systematically destroyed by one man with basic weapons. Jake stopped behind a pillar and took a breath. He was not tired, but he needed a moment to assess the situation. 10 guards left, all bunched together now, all scared. They were shouting at each other in different languages, arguing about what to do. Some wanted to charge him. Others wanted to wait for backup. They were losing cohesion, losing discipline. That was when Jake decided to end it. He stepped out into the open, rifle raised. The guards saw him and opened fire immediately. But Jake did not try to dodge this time. He ran straight at them, firing as he moved. His shots were precise, aimed at the weak points in their armor. Neck joints, gaps under the arms, the seals around their helmets. 3 more guards fell. 2 were wounded. The others broke and ran. They threw down their weapons and fled toward the exits, too terrified to keep fighting. Jake let them go. He had made his point. The hall was suddenly quiet except for the moaning of wounded guards and the crackling of small fires, where plasma bolts had hit flammable materials. Smoke drifted through the air, lit by the blue glow of the remaining light panels. Bodies lay scattered across the floor, some moving weakly, others very still. Jake walked slowly toward the council platform. His boots made soft sounds on the stone floor. He still held the plasma rifle, but it was pointed at the ground now. He stepped over bodies, moved around blood pools until he stood at the base of the raised platform, where the counselors sat. Most of them were hiding. Only a few remained visible, including Counselor Vex, who sat frozen in his chair. His scales had turned a pale gray color that Jake guessed meant fear in his species. 7 of your guards are dead, Jake said. His voice was calm, conversational, like he was discussing the weather. 12 are wounded, all in under 3 minutes, and I am not even tired. He set the rifle down on the floor carefully. Then he held up his empty hands to show he was unarmed. Now let me tell you why I am really here. Why Earth sent me specifically as their diplomatic representative. Nobody answered. The entire hall was silent except for the groaning of the wounded. Earth wanted you to do exactly what you just did, Jake continued. We wanted you to threaten me, to attack me, to show us your true feelings about humanity, because we needed to know if the council would deal with us honestly or if you would try to eliminate us the moment we became inconvenient. He smiled that cold smile again, and we wanted you to see what just one human can do, one soldier with basic weapons in an uncontrolled environment. Now imagine what would happen if Earth sent not 1 but 1,000 like me, 10,000, 1,000,000. Jake let that information settle into their minds before continuing. The Council has 10,000 warships. That is very impressive. Earth has something different. We have 4 billion people who grew up on a world that tried to kill them every single day. We evolved on a death world where everything from the bacteria to the weather to the other animals wanted us dead. We survived by becoming the most dangerous predators on our planet. He pointed at the fallen guards. Every human child learns to fight before they learn algebra. Every human adult serves in planetary defense. We have been preparing for hostile aliens since before we had spaceships. You thought we were weak because we smiled and talked about peace and cooperation. Counselor Thrain found her voice. It was shaky and small. You were lying, all of it? The peaceful explorers? No, Jake said, and his expression softened just a little. That was real. Humanity does want peace. We want to be your friends and partners. We want to build a better galaxy together. But we learned something important during our long history. We learned that you only get peace if you are strong enough to defend it. He picked up his jacket from where he had left it earlier. He shook it out and put it back on. He fixed his tie and smoothed his hair. Once again, he looked like a diplomat instead of a soldier. So here is Earth's new proposal, Jake said. You will give us everything we asked for. Trade rights, colony permissions, everything. And in exchange, humanity will continue being the friendly, peaceful species you thought we were. And if we refuse? Vex asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Jake's smile never changed. Then we stopped being friendly. The council voted 6 hours later. Every single member voted to approve Earth's requests. It was the fastest unanimous decision in the council's 1,000-year history. They gave humanity everything Jake had asked for and more. Trade rights across 15 sectors, permission to colonize 37 systems, full membership in the council with veto power, a mutual defense treaty. They did it because they were terrified. They had seen what one human could do, and they did not want to see what 1,000,000 humans could do. Jake watched the vote from a comfortable room where the aliens had politely asked him to wait. They had not restrained him. They had not even taken his weapons. They were too afraid to try. Instead, they had given him food, water, and a bed. They treated him like an honored guest who could kill them all at any moment, because that was exactly what he was. When the vote was announced, Jake nodded to himself. The mission was complete. Earth had what it needed. Humanity would no longer be contained or treated as inferior. The galaxy would have to accept that humans were here to stay. But Jake felt no joy in the victory. He thought about the 7 guards who had died. They had just been following orders, doing their jobs. They had families somewhere, people who would mourn them. Jake had killed them because it was necessary, but that did not make it right. War was like that. Sometimes you had to do terrible things for good reasons. Sometimes the only way to save lives was to take them. Jake had learned that lesson a long time ago, but it never got easier. A communication device on the table beeped. Jake picked it up and saw Admiral Carter's face on the screen. Commander Morrison, the Admiral said. Congratulations. You did exactly what we needed you to do. Thank you, sir, Jake replied. 3 weeks later, Jake sat in his small apartment on Earth looking out at the ocean. The water was gray and choppy under cloudy skies. Waves crashed against the rocks below his balcony, sending spray high into the air. It was peaceful in a way that space never was. The ocean did not care about politics or war. It just existed, constant and eternal. Jake had been home for 2 days, and he still felt out of place. Everything on Earth seemed too quiet, too safe. People walked the streets without weapons. Children played in parks without fear. Nobody was trying to kill anyone. It felt wrong somehow, like he had stepped into a different reality where the rules he knew no longer applied. His apartment was sparse. Just a bed, a table, a few chairs. No decorations on the walls. No personal items except for a few photos and his military awards in a drawer where he never looked at them. Jake had learned not to get attached to things. Soldiers who collected possessions were soldiers who had something to lose, and something to lose made you weak. The door chimed. Jake got up and opened it to find Admiral Carter standing in the hallway. The old man was in civilian clothes, which was unusual. He normally wore his uniform everywhere like it was a second skin. May I come in? Carter asked. Of course, sir, Jake said, stepping aside. Carter walked in and went straight to the window. He stood there for a moment, looking at the ocean, his hands clasped behind his back. Beautiful view, Carter said. Yes, sir, Jake agreed. I grew up near the ocean, Carter continued. My father was a fisherman. He used to take me out on his boat when I was a boy. I loved it. The smell of the salt air, the cry of the seagulls, the way the boat rocked on the waves. Jake waited. The Admiral had not come here to talk about his childhood. Do you know why I joined the military, Jake? Carter asked, turning to face him. No, sir. Because I wanted to protect places like this, Carter said, gesturing at the ocean. I wanted to make sure my children and grandchildren could grow up in a world where they could watch the waves and not worry about someone dropping bombs on them. That is what all of this is about. All the fighting, all the death, all the hard decisions. We do it so that regular people can live normal lives. I understand, sir, Jake said. Do you? Carter asked. Because you have been avoiding everyone since you got back. You have not talked to any of your old team members. You have not attended any of the ceremonies Earth organized to honor what you did. You just sit here in this empty apartment and stare at the ocean. Jake looked down at his hands. They were steady, no shaking, no visible signs of stress. But inside he felt hollow. I killed 7 people, sir, Jake said quietly. I wounded 12 more. I did it in front of hundreds of witnesses. I did it calmly and efficiently like I was taking out the trash. And the worst part is that I would do it again if I had to. That is what makes you good at your job, Carter said. That is what scares me, Jake replied. Carter sat down in one of the chairs and motioned for Jake to do the same. When they were both seated, the Admiral leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Let me tell you something about war, Jake. Something they do not teach at the academy. War is not about being brave or strong or smart. War is about being willing to do what needs to be done even when it costs you something. Every soldier who has ever fought has paid a price. Some pay with their bodies. Some pay with their minds. Some pay with their souls, he paused, choosing his words carefully. You are afraid that you are becoming a monster. That killing those guards did not bother you enough. But the fact that you are afraid of that, the fact that you are sitting here questioning yourself proves that you are not a monster. Monsters do not worry about the cost. They do not sit alone in empty apartments wondering if they did the right thing. Then what am I? Jake asked. You are a guardian, Carter said simply. You are someone who stands between the innocent and those who would harm them. You do the things that need to be done so that others do not have to. That is not a monster, Jake. That is a hero. Jake laughed bitterly. I do not feel like a hero. Heroes never do, Carter replied. That is another thing they do not teach. Real heroes are just people who did what needed to be done, and then spent the rest of their lives wishing they had not had to. They sat in silence for a while, watching the ocean through the window. The waves kept coming steady and relentless, wearing away at the rocks one tiny bit at a time. I have a new assignment for you, Carter said eventually, if you want it. What kind of assignment? Jake asked. Earth needs people who understand both sides of what we do. People who can fight when necessary, but who also understand why we fight. We are creating a new organization called the Diplomatic Security Service. Think of it as a combination of special operations and the diplomatic corps. People who can negotiate a treaty in the morning and lead a raid in the evening if negotiations fail. Jake listened carefully. It sounded like exactly the kind of thing Earth would need in the coming years. The galaxy had seen what humans could do. Now they needed to see what humans would do with that power. You want me to train them, Jake said. I want you to lead them, Carter corrected. Build the organization from the ground up. Set the standards. Create the training programs. Choose the people. You have complete authority and Earth's full support. That is a lot of responsibility, sir. Yes, it is, Carter agreed. But I cannot think of anyone better suited for it. You understand violence, but you also understand restraint. You know when to fight and when to talk. You have lived in both worlds, Jake. You are exactly what this program needs. Jake thought about it. He thought about spending the rest of his life in this apartment, watching the ocean and wondering if he had become a monster. Or he could do something useful. He could take everything he had learned and use it to build something better. There is something else, Carter added. The Galactic Council is organizing a summit in 3 months. They want to discuss the new relationship between Earth and the other species. They want protocols, agreements. Basically, they want reassurance that we are not going to start conquering everyone. And you want me to attend, Jake finished. I want you to lead the delegation, Carter said. Show them that the man who fought their guards can also sit at a conference table and negotiate in good faith. Prove that humans are not mindless killers. We are dangerous, yes, but we are also reasonable. Jake stood up and walked back to the window. The ocean looked cold and uninviting, but it was also beautiful in its own harsh way. Maybe that was what Earth needed to be. Beautiful but harsh, friendly but dangerous. A species that could be trusted to keep its word but feared if that word was broken. I will do it, Jake said, turning back to face Carter. Both assignments. I will build your diplomatic security service and I will attend the summit. Carter smiled and stood up. He offered his hand and Jake shook it. Thank you, Jake. Earth is lucky to have you. I hope so, sir, Jake replied. I really hope so. After Carter left, Jake stayed at the window for a long time. He thought about the future, about the people he would train, about the summit where he would have to face the aliens again. It would not be easy. Nothing worth doing ever was, but maybe, just maybe, he could make a difference. Maybe he could help build a galaxy where strength and compassion could exist together, where humans could be both warriors and peacemakers. The ocean kept crashing against the rocks, steady and eternal. Jake watched it until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Then he went to his desk and started making plans. There was work to do, and Jake had never been one to sit idle. If Earth needed guardians, he would build them. If the galaxy needed proof that humans could be trusted, he would provide it. He was Commander Jake Morrison, soldier and diplomat, and his war was just beginning. But this time he would fight not with weapons but with words. This time he would build instead of destroy. This time he would show the galaxy what humanity could really be. The next morning, Jake stood in a large room at Earth's military headquarters. 50 people sat in rows of chairs, all looking at him with a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. They were the first candidates for the Diplomatic Security Service, chosen from thousands of applicants. They were all different. Different ages, different backgrounds, different specialties. Some were career soldiers. Others were diplomats with no combat experience. A few were scientists or engineers who had never even considered a military career. But they all had one thing in common. They wanted to serve Earth in this new role. Jake walked to the front of the room and looked at them. He saw young faces full of hope and old faces marked by experience. He saw people who had everything to prove and people who had already proven themselves many times over. My name is Commander Jake Morrison, he began. Some of you know who I am. Some of you have seen the footage from the Galactic Council. Some of you think I am a hero, and some of you think I am a killer. You are all partially right. He paused, letting that sink in. I brought you all here because Earth needs something new. We need people who can walk into a room full of aliens and make them feel safe, but who can also protect that room if things go wrong. We need people who understand that strength without compassion is tyranny, but compassion without strength is weakness. Jake started pacing, his hands behind his back. The galaxy has seen what one human. The training facility was located in the mountains, far from any cities. It covered several square miles of rugged terrain, with forests, rivers, and rocky peaks that provided every type of environment a trainee might encounter. The buildings were simple but functional, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Jake stood on a hillside, watching his first class run through an obstacle course. They had been training for 2 months now, and the transformation was remarkable. When they first arrived, they had been a collection of individuals. Now they were starting to move like a team. Lieutenant Commander Patricia Hayes jogged up the hill to join him. She was his second in command, a career diplomat who had surprised everyone by being one of the top performers in combat training. She was 40 years old, smart, tough, and exactly the kind of person Jake needed. The morning briefing went well, Patricia said. Everyone passed the tactical assessment except for 3 candidates. They will retake it next week. What about the diplomatic scenario yesterday? Jake asked. Mixed results, Patricia admitted. Half the class managed to negotiate successfully with the simulated Vraxian delegation. The other half either gave up too much or created unnecessary conflict. Jake nodded. That was about what he had expected. Combat training was relatively straightforward. You could measure success in concrete terms. But diplomacy was subtle, nuanced, and often frustrating. It required patience and emotional intelligence that not everyone possessed. We will keep working on it, Jake said. They are learning. Below them, one of the trainees slipped and fell into the mud. Instead of getting angry or giving up, the person got back up and kept going. 3 other trainees stopped to help even though it would slow down their own times. Jake smiled. That was the kind of thing he wanted to see. Individual excellence was important, but teamwork was essential. Admiral Carter called this morning, Patricia said. The summit is in 6 weeks. He wants to know if you are ready. Jake thought about that question. Was he ready to walk back into that council chamber? Was he ready to face the aliens who had tried to kill him? To sit across from them and negotiate like nothing had happened? I will be ready, Jake said. I am sure you will be, Patricia replied. But that is not what I asked. I asked if you are ready emotionally. This is going to be difficult, Jake. You are going to see Counselor Vex and Counselor Thrain and all the others who wanted you dead. Can you work with them? Jake appreciated her directness. Patricia did not dance around difficult topics. She said what needed to be said. I do not have to like them, Jake said. I just have to work with them. And yes, I can do that, because the alternative is worse. If we cannot find a way to coexist with the Council, then Earth will always be isolated, always vulnerable. I will not let my personal feelings get in the way of what is best for humanity. Patricia nodded, satisfied with his answer. Good, because you will not be going alone. I am assigning 6 of our top trainees to accompany you as your security detail. They need the experience and you need people you can trust watching your back. 6 might seem excessive, Jake observed, after what happened last time. Patricia said with a slight smile. I think 6 is the bare minimum. Besides, it sends a message. Earth's diplomats do not travel alone anymore. We are serious about protecting our people. Jake could not argue with that logic. The galaxy needed to see that Earth had changed, that humanity would not tolerate threats or assassination attempts. The presence of trained bodyguards would make that clear without anyone needing to say a word. Who did you select? Jake asked. Patricia pulled out a data pad and showed him 6 files. Jake scanned through them quickly. All strong candidates, all capable, all people he would trust in a crisis. Good choices, Jake said. When do we leave? 4 weeks from today. That gives us time to run final training scenarios and make sure everyone is prepared. The next 4 weeks passed quickly. Jake threw himself into the work, training his people during the day and preparing for the summit at night. He studied files on every council member, learning their backgrounds, their motivations, their weaknesses. He reviewed recordings of past summits to understand the protocols and procedures. He practiced negotiation scenarios until he could handle any situation they might throw at him. He also spent time with the 6 people who would accompany him. They were all different, but they all shared certain qualities. They were smart, adaptable, and absolutely committed to the mission. Jake trusted them with his life, which was exactly what he would be doing at the summit. Finally, the day came to leave. Jake and his team boarded a transport ship that would take them to Nexus Station, where the summit would be held. It was the same station where Jake had fought the guards, which was intentional. The council wanted everyone to remember what had happened there. They wanted that memory hanging in the air during every negotiation. The journey took 3 days. Jake spent most of that time alone in his quarters, mentally preparing himself for what was coming. He knew the summit would be difficult. The aliens would be suspicious, hostile, maybe even afraid. They would test him, push him, try to find weaknesses they could exploit. But Jake had an advantage they did not know about. He had spent the last 3 months thinking about nothing but this moment. He had planned for every possibility, prepared for every contingency. He would not be caught off guard. When they arrived at Nexus Station, Jake was ready. The station looked exactly as he remembered it. The same crystal walls, the same massive conference hall, the same elevated platform where the counselors sat. Except the platform was gone now. It had been replaced with a circular arrangement of tables where everyone sat as equals. That was new and it was significant. Jake and his team were escorted to their quarters by a nervous-looking Zarian guard who kept a respectful distance. The aliens were being very careful not to provoke any incidents. They had learned their lesson. That evening, there was a reception for all the delegates. Jake attended in his dress uniform. His 6 team members spread throughout the room in civilian clothes, watching and listening. To anyone who did not know better, they looked like junior diplomats or assistants. But Jake knew they were cataloging every face, every conversation, every potential threat. Counselor Thrain approached Jake near the refreshment table. The insect-like alien looked older somehow, though Jake was not sure how he could tell with a species so different from humans. Commander Morrison, Thrain said formally, welcome back to Nexus Station. Thank you, Counselor, Jake replied. I appreciate the invitation. I wanted to speak with you before the summit begins, Thrain said, to apologize for what happened during your last visit. What we tried to do to you was wrong. It was cowardly and dishonorable. Jake studied her carefully. She seemed sincere, but he had learned not to trust appearances. Apology accepted, Jake said, though I hope you understand that Earth will not tolerate such actions in the future. "We understand completely," Thrain assured him. "The Council has implemented new protocols to ensure that all diplomats are protected, regardless of their species or political positions. What happened to you will not happen again." "I am glad to hear that," Jake said. They talked for a few more minutes about neutral topics before Thrain excused herself. As she walked away, one of Jake's team members, a young woman named Kate Rogers, approached. "What do you think?" Kate asked quietly. "Was she sincere?" "Probably," Jake said. "But sincerity does not matter as much as actions. We will see if the Council backs up their words with actual changes." The next morning, the summit officially began. Over 50 species had sent representatives, making it the largest gathering in Council history. Everyone wanted to be part of shaping Earth's role in the galactic community. The first session was mostly speeches. Each delegation made a statement about their hopes for the summit. When it was Earth's turn, Jake stood and walked to the center of the chamber. Every eye in the room followed him. "Honored delegates," Jake began, "Earth comes to this summit with one simple goal: to be treated fairly and with respect. We do not seek special privileges. We do not demand territory or resources that belong to others. We simply ask to be acknowledged as equals in this galactic community." He paused, letting his words settle. "Some of you are afraid of humanity. You have seen what one human can do, and you worry about what millions of humans might do. That fear is understandable, but I want to be very clear about something. Humans are dangerous, yes, but we are not reckless. We are not cruel. We do not seek conflict." Jake looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as he could. "What we seek is simple. We want the freedom to grow, to explore, to build a future for our species. We want to trade with those who will trade with us. We want to form alliances with those who share our values. And most importantly, we want to contribute to making this galaxy a better, safer place for all species." He returned to his seat. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then one by one, delegates began to nod or make gestures of approval. It was a small thing, but it mattered. Jake had set the tone for the entire summit. Over the next 2 weeks, the real work began. Committees were formed to address different issues. Trade agreements were negotiated. Border disputes were resolved. Mutual defense pacts were discussed. It was slow, tedious work that required endless. 2 years had passed since the summit. Jake stood in the same training facility where he had started the diplomatic security service, but everything had changed. The program had grown from 50 candidates to over 500. New buildings had been constructed. Training scenarios had been refined and improved. What had started as an experiment was now a vital part of Earth's presence in the galaxy. Jake walked through the facility with General Susan Clark, who had taken over day-to-day operations 6 months earlier. Jake had been promoted to Director of Galactic Relations, a position that gave him oversight of all Earth's diplomatic and security operations throughout known space. It was a lot of responsibility, but he had good people helping him. "The new class is performing better than expected," Susan said as they walked. "We are seeing a 20% improvement in both combat and negotiation scores compared to the first cohort." "That is because we know what we are doing now," Jake replied. "The first class was learning as we taught them. Now we have established procedures and proven methods." They stopped at an observation window overlooking a training hall. Below, 30 trainees were engaged in a complex scenario that combined diplomatic negotiation with tactical response. An alien delegation, played by instructors in costume, was demanding territory rights while secretly planning an attack. The trainees had to navigate the situation without starting a war, but also without getting killed. Jake watched as the team leader, a young man named Connor Blake, managed the crisis. He kept the negotiation going while his team quietly moved into defensive positions. When the fake attack came, they were ready. They neutralized the threat without killing anyone and then immediately returned to the negotiation as if nothing had happened. "Excellent work," Susan said with satisfaction. "That team is ready for field assignment." "Agreed," Jake said. "Send them to the Outer Rim. We need people out there who can handle themselves." The Outer Rim had become a major focus for Earth's expansion. In the 2 years since the summit, humanity had established 17 new colonies in previously unclaimed systems. Each colony needed protection, both from pirates and from hostile species that resented Earth's growing influence. The Diplomatic Security Service had proven invaluable in that role. They provided security without being provocative. They negotiated with locals without appearing weak. They were exactly what Jake had envisioned when he created the program. "How are things with the council?" Susan asked as they continued walking. "Better than expected," Jake admitted. "We have had some disputes over trade routes and mining rights, but nothing we could not resolve through negotiation. The council seems to have accepted that Earth is here to stay. And the species that still resent us? There are always going to be some who do not like us," Jake said. "The Zetharians still see us as competition. The Hive Collective is uncomfortable with how fast we are expanding, but they are not hostile, just cautious. As long as we keep proving that we can be trusted, most species will come around eventually." They reached Jake's office, a simple room with a desk, a few chairs, and a large window overlooking the mountains. Jake had kept it deliberately plain. He did not need luxury or status symbols. He just needed a place to work. "There is something else I wanted to discuss," Susan said as they sat down. "Admiral Carter is retiring next month. The Secretary of Defense has asked me to recommend a replacement." Jake looked at her carefully. "And you are recommending me?" "The job is yours if you want it," Susan confirmed. "You have the experience, the respect of the military and diplomatic corps, and the trust of the government. There is no one better qualified." Jake stood and walked to the window. Admiral was a prestigious position, one that would give him enormous influence over Earth's military policy. It was also a desk job that would take him away from the work he loved. "I am honored," Jake said, "but I need to think about it." "Of course," Susan said. "Take your time, but Jake, you have accomplished everything you set out to do. You created the Diplomatic Security Service. You established Earth's position in the galactic community. You have proven that humans can be both strong and honorable. Maybe it is time to take on a new challenge." After Susan left, Jake remained at the window thinking about his future. He was 44 years old now. He had been a soldier for more than half his life. He had fought in wars, built organizations, negotiated treaties. What else was there? His communicator beeped. It was a message from Patricia Hayes, who was now Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. Jake opened the message and read it quickly. Then he read it again more slowly, making sure he understood correctly. The Council wanted Earth to lead a joint task force to deal with pirates in the frontier regions. It would be a combined force of ships and personnel from multiple species, all working together under human command. It was an unprecedented level of trust and responsibility. Jake smiled. This was the kind of challenge that excited him. A chance to prove that humans could lead, not just follow. A chance to show the galaxy that Earth's values of cooperation and mutual respect were not just words, but principles we lived by. He sent a message back to Patricia accepting the assignment. Then he sent another message to Susan declining the admiral position. He was not ready for a desk job yet. There was still too much work to do. 3 weeks later, Jake stood on the bridge of the Earthship Guardian, watching as vessels from 6 different species arrived to join the task force. There were Vraxian cruisers, sleek and deadly, Hive Collective drones, small but numerous, Zarian frigates built for speed, even a few Zetharian warships, though they kept their distance from the others. It was an impressive sight. Representatives from species that had fought each other for centuries were now working together under human leadership. 2 years ago, it would have been impossible. Now it was reality. "All ships report ready, Commander," said Lieutenant Rogers, who served as his operations officer. "Excellent," Jake said. "Send the message. All ships, this is Commander Morrison. Our mission is simple. We are going to find the pirate bases in the frontier region and shut them down. We will give them one chance to surrender. If they refuse, we will use whatever force is necessary to eliminate the threat." He paused, looking at the faces of his diverse crew. "I know many of you have never worked with humans before. Some of you may not trust us. That is fine. Trust is earned, not given. Over the next few weeks, we will earn each other's trust by doing our jobs professionally and treating each other with respect. We are not Vraxians or Hive members or humans on this mission. We are a team. We succeed or fail together." The crew responded with nods and gestures of agreement. Jake could see skepticism on some faces, but he could also see curiosity and cautious hope. "Set course for the frontier," Jake ordered. "Let us go to work." The operation lasted 6 weeks and was more successful than anyone had anticipated. The task force located and destroyed 15 pirate bases, captured over 200 pirates, and freed nearly 1,000 captives who had been held for ransom. More importantly, the different species learned to work together. There were problems, of course. Cultural misunderstandings led to arguments. Different combat doctrines caused confusion during battles. Some species ate foods that others found disgusting or offensive, but they worked through these issues, finding compromises and solutions. By the end of the operation, the ships that had arrived as strangers departed as allies. Crew members exchanged contact information and promised to stay in touch. Officers talked about running joint training exercises. It was exactly what Jake had hoped for. When Jake returned to Earth, he found a message waiting from Admiral Carter. The old man wanted to meet for dinner before his retirement ceremony. They met at a quiet restaurant overlooking the ocean, the same ocean Jake had watched from his apartment 2 years earlier. "I heard about the frontier operation," Carter said as they sat down. "Impressive work. You made Earth look very good out there." "Thank you, sir," Jake said. "But it was not just me. Everyone on that task force deserves credit." "Humble as always," Carter said with a smile. "But we both know you were the key. You showed those aliens that humans can lead without dominating. You proved that we can be trusted with power." They ordered food and talked about old times, about missions they had run together before Jake became famous. It was comfortable, easy conversation between two soldiers who understood each other. "I'm glad you turned down the admiral position," Carter said eventually. "You are more valuable doing what you are doing. Earth needs warriors like you, Jake. Not just people who can fight, but people who understand when not to fight." "That is the hardest part," Jake admitted. "Knowing when violence is necessary and when it is just convenient." "Yes, it is," Carter agreed. "But you have good instincts. You always have." They finished their meal and walked out to the parking area. Carter stopped and looked at the ocean, just as he had done in Jake's apartment 2 years earlier. "Do you ever wonder if we did the right thing?" Carter asked. "Revealing Earth's true nature to the galaxy. Sometimes I wake up at night and worry that we started something we cannot finish." "Every day," Jake said honestly. "But then I think about the alternative. If we had stayed hidden, stayed weak, the Council would have destroyed us eventually. At least now we have a chance. We have." 5 years had passed since Jake first stood before the Galactic Council. He was 47 now, with gray beginning to show at his temples. He still trained every morning, still kept himself in fighting shape, but he felt the years more than he used to. Small aches that took longer to heal, a slower recovery time after intense exercise, the inevitable march of time that no amount of discipline could stop completely, but his mind was sharper than ever. Experience had taught him things that no training program could provide. He understood the subtle dynamics of galactic politics. He knew which species could be trusted and which ones required constant vigilance. He had learned to read the intentions behind diplomatic language and to navigate the complex web of alliances that held the galaxy together. Today, Jake stood in a conference room on Earth, meeting with the Secretary of Defense and several other high-ranking officials. They were discussing a situation that had been developing for months and had finally reached a critical point. The Zarian Empire is mobilizing forces along the border with the Kelvin Federation, the Secretary said, pulling up a star map that showed troop movements and fleet positions. "Intelligence suggests they are preparing to invade within the next 3 months. The Kelvin Federation has requested Earth's assistance under the Mutual Defense Treaty we signed last year," added General Clark. "If we honor that treaty, we will be at war with the Zarians. And if we do not honor it," Jake said, "every treaty Earth has ever signed becomes worthless. No one will trust us again." "Exactly," the Secretary agreed. "Which is why we need your assessment, Commander Morrison. You know the Zarians better than anyone. You have dealt with them personally on multiple occasions. Can this situation be resolved without war?" Jake studied the star map carefully. The Zarians were a proud warrior culture that valued strength above all else. They had been expanding their territory for decades, usually through intimidation rather than actual combat. Most species simply gave them what they wanted rather than risk a war they would probably lose. But the Kelvin Federation was different. They had resources the Zarians needed, particularly rare minerals used in advanced ship construction. The Federation had refused to sell these minerals at the prices the Zarians demanded, which had led to increasing tensions. "Maybe," Jake said finally. "The Zarians respect strength, but they also respect cunning. If we can find a way to give them what they need without them appearing weak, they might accept a diplomatic solution. What do you have in mind? The secretary asked. Jake thought for a moment, turning the problem over in his mind. Then an idea began to form. The Zetharians do not just want the minerals, they want to demonstrate their dominance. They want other species to see that the Zetharian Empire cannot be denied. If we can give them a victory that satisfies their pride without requiring actual war, they might take it. Go on, General Clark said, leaning forward with interest. We organize a grand negotiation, Jake explained. Not just Earth and the Zetharians, but multiple species. We make it a spectacle, something the entire galaxy will watch. The Zetharians present their demands publicly. We negotiate, make them work for every concession, but ultimately give them a trade agreement that gets them the minerals they need at a fair price. And how does that satisfy their need for dominance? The secretary asked skeptically. Because we frame it as them forcing the galaxy to recognize their power, Jake said. We let them be the aggressor who brought everyone to the negotiating table. They get the minerals and they get to look strong. Meanwhile, the Kelvin Federation keeps their sovereignty. We avoid a war and everyone goes home happy. The officials looked at each other, considering the proposal. It could work, General Clark said slowly. But the Zetharians are unpredictable. If they decide they would rather fight than talk, this could backfire badly. That is why I need to be the one to propose it, Jake said. I have a history with the Zetharian leadership. They know I'm not afraid of them, which means they will take me seriously. When would you leave? The secretary asked. Tomorrow, Jake replied. The sooner we start this process, the less time the Zetharians have to commit to their invasion plans. The meeting concluded with approval for Jake's plan. He spent the rest of the day making preparations, contacting key allies and arranging for diplomatic channels to be opened. By the next morning, he was on a ship headed for Zetharian space. The journey took 4 days. Jake used that time to review everything he knew about Zetharian culture and politics. He studied their leaders, their military doctrine, their historical patterns of behavior. By the time he arrived at the Zetharian homeworld, he felt as prepared as he could be. The Zetharian capital was an impressive sight. Massive pyramids reached toward the sky, each one dedicated to a different warrior hero from their history. The streets were wide and clean, designed for military parades. Everywhere Jake looked, he saw symbols of martial power and glory. He was escorted to the Imperial Palace by a squadron of guards who watched him with barely concealed hostility. The Zetharians had never liked humans. They saw Earth's rise as a challenge to their own dominance in the galaxy. But they also respected what Jake had done at the Council 5 years earlier. A warrior culture could appreciate another warrior, even if they did not like him. Emperor Krax received Jake in a throne room designed to intimidate. The ceiling was 100 feet high, covered in murals depicting famous battles. The throne itself was carved from a single piece of black stone and sat on a raised platform that forced visitors to look up at the emperor. Krax was old for a Zetharian, his scales beginning to fade from their original deep red to a duller brown, but his eyes were still sharp and calculating. He watched Jake approach with the patience of a predator, waiting to see if prey would run or fight. Commander Morrison, Krax said in heavily accented standard, the human who killed 7 guards and frightened the entire Galactic Council. I have wanted to meet you for some time. Emperor Krax, Jake replied, bowing slightly in the Zetharian fashion. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. I see you because I am curious, Krax said bluntly. Earth has asked for this meeting, which means you want something from me. I wonder what you think you can offer that would interest the Zetharian Empire. I am offering you a chance to demonstrate your strength without spilling blood, Jake said directly. Zetharians appreciated bluntness. The galaxy knows you are mobilizing for war against the Kelvin Federation. They know you want their minerals. Everyone is waiting to see what you will do. And you think I should negotiate instead of conquer? Krax asked with amusement. I think you should do whatever benefits the Zetharian Empire most, Jake replied. War will give you the minerals, but it will cost ships, soldiers, and resources. It will also unite other species against you out of fear. Negotiation will give you the minerals and make you look reasonable, which might be more valuable in the long run. Krax leaned back in his throne. Considering this, you want me to look weak, he said finally. No, Jake corrected. I want you to look smart. A warrior who only knows how to fight is predictable. A warrior who knows when to fight and when to negotiate is dangerous. The galaxy fears predictable enemies. They respect dangerous ones. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Explain. If you invade the Kelvin Federation, you confirm what everyone already thinks about Zetharians. That you are aggressive, short-sighted, and only understand force. But if you force the galaxy to give you what you want through negotiation, you show that Zetharians can dominate through multiple means. That makes you more unpredictable, more threatening. Jake took a step closer to the throne. 5 years ago, I could have killed everyone in that council chamber. I had the weapons and the skill. But I stopped. Do you know why? Tell me, Crack said, genuinely interested now. Because killing them all would have made me a monster. Stopping made me something far more dangerous. It made me someone who chooses when to use violence. The council fears me not because I killed 7 guards, but because I could have killed everyone and chose not to. The restraint is what terrifies them. Crax was silent for a long moment. Then he began to laugh, a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the throne room. You are clever, human. Very clever. You want me to demonstrate restraint so that when I do choose violence in the future, it will be more effective. I want you to expand your options, Jake said. Right now, species give you what you want because they fear your military. Imagine if they also feared your diplomatic skill. Imagine if no one could predict whether you would negotiate or attack. That uncertainty would give you power beyond what any fleet could provide. The Emperor stood and walked down from his throne platform. He circled Jake slowly, studying him like a specimen under glass. And what does Earth gain from this? Crax asked. Peace, Jake said simply. We gain more time to grow and build without the galaxy tearing itself apart in war. We gain credibility as a species that can solve problems, and we gain a reputation as someone worth talking to before fighting. You gain much more than we do, Crax observed. Perhaps, Jake agreed, but you gain what you actually need, which is the minerals. Everything else is just about how you get them. I am offering you a way to get what you need while also strengthening your long-term.